The stagecoach lurched to a halt in front of the weathered general store, and Winona Owens pressed her gloved hand against the window, her breath catching at the sight of Central City, Colorado spreading before her like a dusty promise she hoped wouldn't break. It was 1876, and she had traveled over 1,000 miles from Philadelphia to marry a man whose letters had been kind but whose face remained a mystery. And now, as she stepped down onto the packed Earth Street, her legs trembling from days of travel, she wondered if Thomas Bryant would take one look at her plain features and regret ever placing that advertisement in the Eastern papers. The September air carried the scent of pine from the surrounding mountains, and something sharper, the metallic tang of the mines that had built this town from nothing into a bustling hub of fortune seekers and families trying to carve lives from the unforgiving landscape. Winona smoothed her travel-worn skirts, acutely aware of how the dust had settled into every fiber, how her auburn hair had escaped its pins despite her best efforts, how she must look like exactly what she was, a desperate woman with no other options. Thomas Bryant stood outside the mercantile, his hat in his hands, and Winona knew him immediately not by any physical description he had provided, but by the way his eyes searched the stagecoach passengers with an expression that mirrored her own, hope warring with fear. He was taller than she had imagined, broad-shouldered from ranch work, with sun-darkened skin and dark hair that curled slightly at his collar. His face was handsome in a weathered way, carved by wind and sun into something both rugged and honest, and when their eyes met, Winona saw his expression shift into something she could not quite read. "Miss Owens." His voice carried across the space between them, deeper than she had expected, with a warmth that made her throat tight. "Mr. Bryant." She moved toward him, clutching her carpetbag, painfully aware of the townspeople watching this meeting with undisguised curiosity. Mail-order brides were not uncommon in these parts, but they were always a source of speculation, of whispered conversations about what drove a woman to such measures, what kind of man needed to send away for companionship. Thomas stepped forward and took her bag, his fingers brushing hers briefly, and she felt calluses rough as tree bark, the hands of a working man. "The journey was long, I imagine. You must be exhausted." "I am well enough." Winona lifted her chin, determined not to show weakness, not to give him any reason to doubt his choice before they even began. "The stagecoach driver said you have a ranch outside of town. About 5 miles north. Nothing fancy, but it is home." He gestured toward a wagon hitched to 2 sturdy horses. "I thought we might speak with Reverend Miller this evening if you are agreeable. Get the ceremony done proper before we head out. So soon." Winona had known this was coming, had prepared herself for it during the endless miles of travel, but hearing the words made it suddenly, terrifyingly real. She would marry this stranger tonight, would follow him to his isolated ranch, would share his bed and his life with nothing but a few hopeful letters between them to suggest they might find happiness together. That would be fine. She managed to keep her voice steady, though her hands shook as she accepted his help into the wagon. Thomas settled beside her, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him, smell the clean scent of soap and leather and something uniquely him. He did not immediately start the horses, instead turning to face her with an expression so serious it made her stomach clench. "Miss Owens, I want you to know that I will not hold you to anything if you have changed your mind. I can pay for your passage back east if this is not what you want." His brown eyes searched her face, and she saw genuine concern there, not the anger or disappointment she had feared. "I know I am not much to look at, and the ranch is isolated. If you were expecting something different, something better, I would understand." The words burst from Winona before she could stop them, raw with the emotion she had been holding back for months. "I have nothing to return to, Mr. Bryant. My parents died last winter of fever, and the boarding house where I worked closed when Mrs. Henderson passed. I have $30 to my name and nowhere to go. You could be anyone, and I would still be grateful for the chance you have given me." She hated how pitiful it sounded, how it reduced her to nothing but need, but it was the truth, and she had learned that lies only made things worse in the end. Thomas was quiet for a long moment, his jaw working as if he were chewing on words he was not sure how to say. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough. "I am sorry for your losses. That is a hard thing to bear." He picked up the reins but did not start the horses yet. "I want you to know something, though. I did not send for a mail-order bride because I could not find a woman here. I sent for one because I wanted someone who understood what it meant to start fresh, to build something from nothing. The women in town, they want things I cannot give them: security and society and established homes. I have a dream, Miss Owens, of building the best horse ranch in Colorado, and I need someone who can dream alongside me, who can work hard and not complain when things get difficult. Your letters suggested you were that kind of woman." Winona felt something loosen in her chest, a knot of tension she had been carrying since she first saw the advertisement. He was not looking for perfection or beauty or any of the things she could not provide. He was looking for a partner, and that, perhaps, was something she could be. "I am not afraid of hard work, Mr. Bryant, and I have no illusions about what life on a ranch entails. I may have been raised in the city, but I am a quick learner and I am stronger than I look." A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth, the first she had seen, and it transformed his face from serious to something almost boyish. "I believe you are, Miss Owens. I believe you are." The Reverend's house was a small white structure near the church, and Reverend Miller himself was a kindly man with silver hair and laugh lines around his eyes. His wife, Martha, fussed over Winona, helping her freshen up and even providing a spray of late-season wildflowers to hold, purple asters and golden rabbit brush that smelled of sage and summer. "You are doing a brave thing, dear," Martha whispered as she pinned Winona's hair into something more presentable. "Thomas Bryant is a good man, one of the best I know. He will treat you well." Winona wanted to ask how she could be sure, wanted to voice all the fears that crowded her throat, but there was no time, and perhaps there were no answers anyway. She simply nodded and followed Martha back to the small parlor where Thomas waited with the Reverend. The ceremony was brief, simple words that bound them together in the eyes of God and the law. And when Thomas slipped a plain gold band onto her finger, Winona felt the weight of it like an anchor, something solid in a world that had become unmoored. His hand was warm and steady on hers as he repeated his vows, and when the Reverend pronounced them man and wife, Thomas leaned down and pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead. Nothing more, a gesture that felt almost protective. "Welcome to your new life, Mrs. Bryant," he said quietly, and Winona wondered if he could hear how her heart was racing, if he knew how much those words meant to someone who had thought she might never have a new life at all. They rode out of Central City as the sun began to set, painting the mountains in shades of gold and crimson, and Winona watched the town disappear behind them with a mixture of relief and apprehension. The wagon rattled over the rutted road, and Thomas pointed out landmarks: the creek where he got water, the stand of pines that marked the boundary of his land, the distant peaks that stood like sentinels over the valley. "It is beautiful," Winona said, and meant it. She had spent her entire life surrounded by brick and cobblestone, and the vast openness of this land was both terrifying and exhilarating. "It can be harsh, too," Thomas warned. "Winters are brutal and we are far from town. There will be times when we are snowed in for weeks. You need to be prepared for that. I will adapt. Winona glanced at him, studying his profile in the fading light. Mr. Bryant, may I ask you something? Thomas, you should call me Thomas now, and yes, ask whatever you like. Why did you hesitate when you first saw me at the stagecoach? She had to know, had to understand what she had seen in his face. Thomas was silent for so long she thought he might not answer, and then he sighed. Because you looked afraid, and I hated that I was the cause of it. I was afraid you would look at me and see a mistake, that you would spend the rest of your life regretting this decision. The honesty of it struck her hard, and Winona realized they had been carrying the same fear, both of them convinced they were not enough for the other. I was afraid of the same thing, she admitted. That you would look at me and wish you had waited for someone prettier, someone more accomplished. You are plenty pretty, Thomas said gruffly, and even in the dim light she could see the flush on his cheeks. And I do not care about accomplishments. I care about character, and your letters showed me you have that in abundance. They rode in comfortable silence after that, and when the ranch came into view, Winona felt her breath catch. It was modest, a sturdy log house with a covered porch, a large barn, and several corrals where horses moved like shadows in the twilight. Mountains rose behind it, dark and imposing, and the whole scene had a wild beauty that made her chest ache with something she could not name. It is not much yet, Thomas said, helping her down from the wagon, but I have plans. I want to expand the barn, add more corrals, maybe build a larger house someday when we can afford it. It is wonderful. Winona meant it. The house might be small, but it was well built, the kind of place that spoke of care and attention to detail. You did all this yourself, with some help from neighbors for the bigger jobs, but mostly, yes. There was pride in his voice, and Winona understood it. This was his dream made tangible, his future taking shape board by board. Inside, the house was clean and spare, furnished with handmade pieces that were functional if not fancy. Thomas lit lamps, casting warm light over the single main room that served as kitchen, dining area, and sitting room. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, and Winona could imagine it blazing with warmth during the harsh winters he had mentioned. The bedroom is through there, Thomas said, gesturing to a door. I will sleep out here tonight, give you privacy to settle in. Winona turned to look at him, surprised. We are married now, Thomas. You do not need to do that. His expression was difficult to read, a mixture of want and restraint. I know what the law says, what the church says, but I want you to be comfortable, Winona. I do not want you to feel forced into anything before you are ready. Something warm bloomed in her chest at his words, at the respect they implied. So many men would have simply taken what they considered their right, but Thomas was offering her a choice, a chance to adjust to this new reality before intimacy became part of it. Thank you, she said softly. That is kind of you. I will tend to the horses and then make us some supper. Nothing fancy, just beans and cornbread, but it will fill you up. Winona moved toward the bedroom, then paused. Thomas, tomorrow will you teach me what I need to know to be helpful here? I meant what I said about not being afraid of hard work. His smile was genuine this time, reaching his eyes. I will teach you everything. We are partners now, Winona, in all things. The bedroom was small but tidy, with a large bed covered in a colorful quilt, a dresser, and a washstand. Winona sank onto the bed, her legs suddenly weak, and let herself feel the full weight of the day. She had done it. She had married a stranger and traveled to the edge of civilization, and somehow, impossibly, she did not regret it. Thomas Bryant was nothing like the harsh, desperate men she had feared she might find. He was kind and honest and clearly willing to meet her halfway in this strange new partnership they had formed. She unpacked her few belongings, hanging her 2 spare dresses in the small wardrobe, setting out her hairbrush and the small photograph of her parents that was her most precious possession. The room already felt less foreign by the time Thomas called her for supper. They ate at the rough-hewn table, and Winona discovered she was ravenous, the simple food tasting better than anything she could remember. Thomas told her about the ranch, about the horses he bred and trained, about his dream of becoming known throughout Colorado for quality stock. His face came alive when he talked about it, his hands gesturing, his voice passionate, and Winona found herself drawn in, asking questions, genuinely interested. "You really love it," she observed. "The horses, the land, all of it." "I do. It is the only thing I have ever wanted." He paused, meeting her eyes across the table. "Well, not the only thing. I wanted someone to share it with. That is why I wrote those letters, why I hoped someone like you might answer." "Someone like me," Winona repeated. "Someone real. Someone who understood that life is not always easy, that sometimes you have to fight for what you want. Your letters, they were honest in a way others were not. You did not try to make yourself sound perfect or pretend you were doing this for any reason other than necessity. I appreciated that." Winona felt her cheeks warm. "I did not think dishonesty would serve either of us. You deserved to know who you were getting. And you deserved the same. I hope I have not disappointed you so far." "You have not." The words came easily because they were true. Thomas had exceeded her cautious hopes in every way. They talked long into the night, sharing stories of their pasts, their fears, their hopes. Winona learned that Thomas had lost his own parents when he was 16, that he had worked on other men's ranches for years before saving enough to buy this land, that he was 28 now and had begun to feel the loneliness of his isolated life more keenly with each passing season. He learned that she was 23, that she had once dreamed of being a teacher before circumstances forced her into factory work and boarding house labor, that she loved to read but had left her small collection of books behind because she could not afford the extra weight in her luggage. "I will get you books," Thomas promised. "The next time I go to town, I will buy whatever they have. And maybe, when we can afford it, we can subscribe to some of those literary magazines from back east." The gesture touched her more than he could know, the acknowledgement that she was more than just a worker, that her desires mattered. "I would like that very much." When exhaustion finally overtook conversation, Thomas made up a bed for himself on the floor near the fireplace, refusing Winona's protests. "You need a good night's sleep after all that travel," he insisted. "We can figure out other arrangements later." Winona retreated to the bedroom, but sleep was slow to come. She lay in the darkness, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the ranch, wind in the pines, the distant call of an owl, the restless movement of horses in the corrals. She thought about the man sleeping in the other room, about the strange path that had brought them together, about the future that stretched before them, uncertain but somehow less frightening than it had been that morning. The days that followed fell into a rhythm that surprised Winona with its comfort. Thomas woke before dawn each day, and she learned to rise with him, making coffee and breakfast while he tended to the horses. He was patient as he taught her the routines of ranch life: how to gather eggs from the temperamental chickens, how to milk the cow without getting kicked, how to judge the weather by the behavior of the animals and the quality of the light. She learned the names of the horses, learned which ones were gentle enough for a novice to handle and which required Thomas's expertise. There was Blaze, a copper-colored gelding with a white star on his forehead, who became her favorite for his patient temperament. There was Thunder, a black stallion who was the pride of Thomas's breeding program, fierce and beautiful and completely devoted to his owner. There were mares heavy with foal, yearlings learning to accept halters and lead ropes, and a pair of older horses who had earned their retirement but whom Thomas kept out of sentiment. "They were the first horses I owned," he explained one afternoon as they watched the two grays graze peacefully in a far pasture. "Bought them at auction when they were half-starved and worked nearly to death. Nursed them back to health, and they served me faithfully for years. Could not bring myself to sell them when they got too old for hard work." Winona looked at him with new understanding. The tenderness he showed the animals, the way he spoke to them in low, soothing tones, the care he took with their comfort, it all spoke of a capacity for gentleness she was coming to recognize extended to her as well. He never pushed her, never demanded more than she was ready to give, whether in terms of physical labor or emotional intimacy. They still slept separately, though Winona had begun to wonder if that needed to continue. She found herself noticing things about Thomas: the strength in his hands as he worked, the rare but genuine smiles he gave her, the way his eyes softened when he looked at her. He was handsome in a way she had not fully appreciated that first day, and more than that, he was good. Truly, deeply good in a way that made her feel safe for the first time in years. 3 weeks into their marriage, a storm rolled in from the mountains, dark clouds boiling up with terrifying speed. Thomas rushed to secure the animals, and Winona helped as best she could, her skirts whipping around her legs as the wind picked up. They got the horses into the barn and the chickens into their coop just as the first fat raindrops began to fall, and then they were running for the house, laughing breathlessly as thunder cracked overhead. They stumbled through the door drenched and panting, and Winona caught sight of them both in the small mirror by the door. Thomas with his hair plastered to his forehead, his shirt soaked and clinging to his broad shoulders, and herself looking like a drowned cat, her carefully pinned hair hanging in wet ropes down her back. It should have been mortifying, but instead, she started to laugh, great peals of laughter that she could not contain. Thomas stared at her for a moment, then began to laugh as well, deep, rumbling chuckles that made his whole body shake. "We look like we went swimming in our clothes," he managed between laughs. "I must look a fright," Winona gasped, trying to wring water from her hair. "You look alive," Thomas said, and the way he said it, the warmth in his voice, made her breath catch. "You look happy." "I am," she realized aloud. "I did not expect to be, but I am." Something shifted in the air between them, the laughter fading into something more intense. Thomas took a step closer, his eyes searching her face. "Winona, these past weeks with you, they have been the best of my life. I know this started as an arrangement, a practical solution for both of us, but it has become more than that for me. You have become more than that." Her heart hammered in her chest. "What are you saying, Thomas?" "I am saying that I have feelings for you, real feelings. I look forward to seeing you each morning, to hearing your thoughts, to working beside you. When I imagined my future, I saw a successful ranch, but now when I imagine it, I see you there beside me, and that matters more than any of the rest of it." He reached out and gently brushed a wet strand of hair from her face. "I am saying that you are my only joy, Winona Bryant. You have brought light into my life in a way I did not know was possible." Tears pricked at Winona's eyes, but they were good tears, tears of relief and happiness and something deeper that she was only beginning to name. "I was so afraid," she whispered. "Afraid that you would regret choosing me, that I would not be enough for you. Regret you." Thomas cupped her face in his calloused hands, his touch infinitely gentle. "Winona, you are everything I did not know I needed. Your strength, your kindness, your willingness to build this life with me, I could never regret you." "I have feelings for you too," she admitted, the words tumbling out. "I did not expect to. I thought this would be a marriage of convenience, but Thomas, you have been so patient, so good to me. I find myself thinking about you constantly, wanting to make you smile, wanting to be close to you." "Then let me be close to you," he murmured, lowering his head slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. "Let me show you how much you mean to me." Winona rose on her toes and closed the distance between them, pressing her lips to his in a kiss that started gentle and quickly became something more. Thomas made a low sound in his throat and pulled her closer, one hand tangling in her wet hair while the other wrapped around her waist. She could feel the strength of him, the careful control he maintained even as she felt him trembling. And she knew with sudden certainty that this was right, that he was right, that all the fear and uncertainty had been leading her to this moment, to this man. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Thomas rested his forehead against hers. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice rough. "I do not want to rush you. I am sure." Winona met his eyes, letting him see the truth in hers. "I want this. I want you. I want us to be truly married in every way." He kissed her again, softer this time but no less intense, and then swept her into his arms, carrying her toward the bedroom despite her laughing protests about dripping water everywhere. "We will clean up later," he said, kicking the door shut behind them. "Right now, I just want to be with my wife." The storm raged outside while they discovered each other inside, and Winona learned that Thomas brought the same patience and tenderness to lovemaking that he did to everything else. He took his time, asking what she liked, paying attention to every response, making sure her pleasure matched his own. She had heard married women complain about their wifely duties, had braced herself for something to be endured, but this was nothing like that. This was beautiful and intimate and achingly tender, a joining that felt like it meant something beyond the physical. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the bed, listening to the rain drum on the roof, and Winona felt a peace settle over her that she had not known since before her parents died. Thomas traced lazy patterns on her bare shoulder, his touch sending pleasant shivers through her. "I love you," he said quietly. "I know it is fast, but I do. I love you, Winona." She turned in his arms to look at him, seeing the vulnerability in his face, the fear that maybe he had said too much too soon. "I love you too," she replied, and watched joy break across his features like sunrise. "I think I have been falling in love with you since that first night when you offered to let me leave, when you put my comfort above your own needs." He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. "You are stuck with me now, you know. I am never letting you go." "Good," she whispered against his mouth, "because I am never leaving." The weeks turned into months, and autumn gave way to the harsh Colorado winter Thomas had warned her about. The first major snowstorm hit in late November, blanketing the ranch in 3 feet of white and trapping them effectively as if they lived on an island. But Winona discovered she did not mind the isolation. She and Thomas developed a comfortable routine, working together to care for the animals, spending long evenings by the fire reading aloud to each other from the small stack of books Thomas had brought back from his last trip to town. They talked about everything and nothing, sharing dreams and fears and silly observations that made each other laugh. Thomas taught Winona to play chess with a set his grandfather had made, and she discovered she had an aptitude for strategy that delighted them both. She taught him some of the songs her mother had sung, and his deep voice blending with her lighter one filled the small house with music that made the darkness outside seem less oppressive. On Christmas morning, Thomas surprised her with a gift he had clearly spent weeks crafting in secret. A beautiful bookshelf for the bedroom, sanded smooth and stained a deep honey color. "For all the books I planned to get you," he explained, looking almost shy. "And because you deserve nice things, Winona. You deserve everything good." She had made him a new shirt from fabric she had carefully saved for from the household money, embroidering his initials on the cuff in dark thread. It was a small thing, but he held it like it was precious, running his fingers over the stitching with wonder. "No one has made me anything since my mother died," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you, Winona. I will treasure this always." They made love that night with the tenderness of long familiarity, combined with the passion that seemed to grow rather than diminish with time. Winona had learned her husband's body as intimately as he had learned hers, knew what touches made him groan, what kisses made him tremble, and she took deep pleasure in using that knowledge. "I never knew it could be like this," Thomas confessed as they lay sated and drowsy in each other's arms. "I had been with women before, quick encounters that meant nothing. But this, being with someone I love, someone who loves me back, it is different. It is everything." "It is everything," Winona agreed, pressing a kiss to his chest, right over his steadily beating heart. Winter gradually released its grip, and spring arrived with a rush of snowmelt and wildflowers. The ranch came alive with new activity as 4 mares gave birth to healthy foals, leggy and uncertain but beautiful even in their awkwardness. Winona fell in love with each one, spending hours in the barn watching them nurse and play, learning from Thomas how to handle them so they would grow up comfortable with human contact. "You have a good touch with them," Thomas observed one afternoon as Winona successfully haltered a particularly skittish foal. "Natural horsewomanship. I think you have found your calling." She laughed but felt a glow of pride at his words. The woman who had arrived last September, uncertain and afraid, seemed like a different person from who she had become. The work had strengthened her body, leaving her lean and capable, and the love had strengthened her spirit, giving her a confidence she had never possessed before. In early May, Thomas had to make a trip to Denver to meet with potential buyers for some of his trained horses. He asked Winona if she wanted to come, but she declined, feeling uneasy about leaving the ranch unattended, especially with the new foals. He was reluctant to go without her, but the business was important, potentially the biggest sale he had ever made. "I will only be gone 4 days, he promised, pulling her close on the morning of his departure. "And Jake Patterson from the neighboring ranch said he would check on you, make sure you have everything you need." "I will be fine, Thomas. We cannot both abandon the ranch, and this sale is important for our future." She kissed him firmly. "Go make us rich." He laughed and kissed her back, longer and deeper. "I do not need to be rich. I already have everything I want right here, but I will make us comfortable at least. Secure." Winona waved as he rode away, Thunder's black coat gleaming in the morning sun, and then turned back to her chores, determined to prove she could handle everything in his absence. The first 2 days went smoothly. She tended the animals, prepared her meals, even managed to repair a section of fence that had come loose during a windstorm. She felt proud of her competence, confident in the knowledge she had gained. The 3rd day, everything went wrong. She woke to find one of the mares, Daisy, clearly in distress in the far pasture. The horse was lying down, trying repeatedly to roll, classic signs of colic that Thomas had taught her to recognize. Winona's stomach dropped. Colic could kill a horse if not treated promptly, and she was alone with no way to get help quickly. She forced herself to stay calm, remembering everything Thomas had told her. She got a halter on Daisy and started walking her, keeping her moving even though the mare clearly wanted to lie down and roll, which could twist her intestines fatally. For hours, Winona walked the horse, her arms aching from holding the lead rope, her legs trembling with exhaustion, all while praying that Daisy would recover, and that Thomas would somehow come home early. By afternoon, the mare seemed slightly better, no longer trying to roll as desperately, but Winona was afraid to leave her alone. She was in the pasture, still walking Daisy in slow circles, when she heard the sound of hooves and looked up to see a rider approaching. For a moment her heart leaped, thinking Thomas had returned, but the horse was bay, not black, and the rider was a stranger. The man pulled up his horse near the fence, and Winona felt a prickle of unease. He was middle-aged, weathered, with cold eyes that assessed her in a way that made her skin crawl. "Well now, little lady all alone, that is not safe in these parts. My husband will be back shortly," Winona lied, keeping her voice steady. "I am managing just fine." "That's so. Looks to me like you got a sick horse there and no idea what to do about it." He swung down from his saddle, starting to climb over the fence, and alarm bells rang in Winona's head. "I said I am fine. Please leave." She tried to put authority into her voice, but it came out higher than she wanted. Now, that is no way to treat a neighbor trying to help. He was closer now, and Winona could smell whiskey on him even from several feet away. "Name's Garrett. I have been watching this place, wondering when Bryant would leave his pretty little wife unprotected." Terror flooded through Winona, but she refused to show it. She was alone, miles from help, with a sick horse she could not abandon and a drunk man with clear bad intentions approaching. Her mind raced through options, all of them bad. She could try to run for the house where Thomas kept a rifle, but Garrett was between her and the buildings and she could not leave Daisy anyway. "My neighbor is checking on me," she tried, backing away slowly, still holding Daisy's lead rope. "He could arrive any moment. Old Patterson. He is in town getting supplies. I saw him leave this morning." Garrett's smile was ugly. "It is just you and me, sweetheart, and I have been lonely for a long time." Daisy suddenly reared, startled by the tension, and Winona struggled to hold onto the rope. In that moment of distraction, Garrett lunged forward, grabbing her arm with bruising force. Winona screamed and fought, kicking at him, trying to wrench free, but he was stronger, pulling her closer with a grip that felt like iron. The gunshot cracked across the pasture like thunder, and Garrett froze, his eyes going wide. Winona twisted to see Jake Patterson sitting on his horse just inside the gate, his rifle aimed squarely at Garrett's chest. "Let her go," Jake said, his voice calm but deadly serious. "Right now, or the next bullet goes through you instead of past your head." Garrett released Winona so abruptly she stumbled, and Daisy shied away, eyes rolling. He raised his hands, his earlier bravado evaporating. "I was just trying to help, did not mean anything." "You meant plenty, Garrett, and we both know it. Get on your horse and ride out. If I ever see you on Bryant property again, or if I hear you have bothered any other women in this territory, I will not waste a second bullet. I will use the first one to put you down. Understand?" Garrett practically ran to his horse, mounting clumsily and spurring away without looking back. Winona stood trembling, still holding Daisy's rope, trying to process what had just happened, how close she had come to something terrible. Jake dismounted and approached slowly, his weathered face creased with concern. "Are you all right, Mrs. Bryant? Did he hurt you?" "No, you arrived in time, thank you." Her voice shook despite her best efforts. "I thought you were in town." "I was, but something made me turn back." "Call it instinct, call it God's providence. I am just glad I listened to it." He looked at Daisy. "This mare has colic," Winona nodded, grateful to focus on something practical. "I have been walking her for hours. She seems better, but I am afraid to stop." "You did exactly right. Let me help you with her, and then I am staying until Thomas gets back. You should not be alone out here, not with men like Garrett around." They worked together to care for Daisy, and by evening the mare was clearly on the mend, drinking water and showing interest in food. Jake settled into the barn with his bedroll, refusing Winona's offer of the house despite her protests that she felt safe now. "Your reputation is important, Mrs. Bryant, and Thomas is my friend. I will not give anyone cause to gossip. I will be comfortable enough out here, and I will be close if you need anything." When Thomas returned the next afternoon, successful sale completed and spirits high, he found Winona trying to act normal but failing to hide the strain in her eyes. He knew her too well now, could read every shift in her mood, and he gently but firmly extracted the story of what had happened. His face went from concern to furious as she talked, his hands clenching into fists when she described Garrett grabbing her. "I will kill him," he said flatly. "I will find him and put a bullet through him for daring to touch you." "Thomas, no." Winona grabbed his arms, forcing him to look at her. "Jake handled it. I am safe and Daisy recovered. If you go after Garrett now, you could end up in jail or worse. I need you here with me, please." He pulled her into a crushing embrace, burying his face in her hair. "I am so sorry. I should not have left you alone. If anything had happened to you, Winona, I could not have borne it. But nothing did happen. Jake arrived in time and I am fine. We are fine." She held him just as tightly, feeling his heart racing against hers. "But Thomas, I was so scared. Not just for myself, but at the thought that I might never see you again, that something could have ended us before we had barely begun." He kissed her then, desperate and claiming, and she responded with equal fervor, both of them needing to affirm that they were alive, together, safe. They made love that night with an intensity born of fear and relief, clinging to each other as if they could merge into one being that nothing could ever threaten. "You are my everything," Thomas whispered against her skin. "My heart, my home, my reason for existing. You are my only joy, Winona, and I will spend the rest of my life making sure you never doubt that." "I do not doubt it," she replied, tears streaming down her face. "I love you so much it terrifies me. I did not know I could feel this way about anyone." The incident with Garrett left them both shaken, but also more aware of how precious their time together was, how quickly everything could change. Thomas became more protective, insisting Winona learn to shoot the rifle and carry the small pistol he had stored away whenever she was outside alone. She practiced until she could hit targets with reasonable accuracy, though she prayed she would never have to use those skills on a person. Summer arrived in full glory, and the ranch thrived. Thomas's reputation for quality horses spread, bringing buyers from across Colorado and even neighboring territories. The money from the Denver sale allowed them to expand the barn and purchase 2 more breeding mares, and Thomas began to talk seriously about building the bigger house he had mentioned that first day. "I want to give you a proper home," he said one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sun set behind the mountains. "A place with real rooms, maybe even a parlor for entertaining when we have guests. This house is fine, Thomas. It has everything we need. But I want to give you everything you want, not just what you need. You deserve beauty and comfort. You deserve the world." Winona turned to him, cupping his face in her hands. "You are my world. This ranch, this life we are building together, you are my world. A bigger house would be nice someday, but it is not what makes me happy. You make me happy." He kissed her palm, then each of her fingertips, a gesture that had become familiar and beloved. "I am the luckiest man alive, you know that. I sent away for a mail-order bride expecting someone practical and got a woman beyond my wildest dreams. I wondered if you would regret me," Winona admitted. "That first day, and for weeks after, I kept waiting for you to realize you had made a mistake." "Never," Thomas said fiercely. "Not for a single moment. You are my only joy, Winona. The only thing in this world that matters more to me than this ranch, and that is saying something because you know how much the ranch means to me." She laughed and kissed him, tasting the coffee he had been drinking and the mint he liked to chew. "Take me to bed, husband. Show me again how much I matter. With pleasure, wife. In late August, Winona began to suspect she might be pregnant. Her monthly courses had stopped, and she felt a strange combination of exhaustion and giddy energy that seemed to have no other explanation. She was afraid to mention it to Thomas, afraid to hope for something that might not be true, but when another week passed with no change, she could not keep the secret anymore. She told him one morning as they were finishing breakfast, the words tumbling out in a nervous rush. "Thomas, I think I might be expecting a baby. I am not completely certain, but all the signs point to it, and I just wanted you to know, in case." He was around the table before she could finish the sentence, lifting her into his arms and spinning her around despite her laughing protests. "A baby. Winona, are you sure? When? How are you feeling? Are you sick? Should you be resting?" "I am fine, I feel fine. Better than fine, actually. And it would be next spring, April or May, if I am calculating correctly." He set her down gently, as if she were made of glass, his hands framing her face with infinite tenderness. "A baby," he repeated, wonder in his voice. "Our baby. Winona, you have made me the happiest man who has ever lived." Tears filled her eyes at his joy, at the knowledge that he wanted this as much as she did. "You are not worried about the expense or the danger or any of the things that could go wrong. Of course I am worried. I am terrified, but I am also so excited I can barely contain it." He dropped to his knees and pressed his ear to her still flat stomach. "Hello in there, little one. I am your father, and I love you already more than words can say. And your mother, she is the most amazing woman in the world, and you are so lucky to have her." Winona laughed through her tears, running her fingers through his hair. "You are going to be such a good father." "I am going to try. God knows I will try with everything in me." He stood and kissed her softly. "No more heavy lifting. No more working with the difficult horses. I will hire someone from town to help with the harder chores. Thomas, I am pregnant, not an invalid. Women work right up until they deliver. Not my wife. Not when she is carrying my child. I will not risk you, Winona, I cannot." They compromised, with Winona agreeing to take on only lighter tasks and to rest more, while Thomas agreed not to treat her like she was made of spun sugar. He did hire a young man named Ben from town to help with the heavy work, a good-natured 18-year-old who reminded Winona of a friendly puppy in his eagerness to please. As her belly began to swell, Winona found herself overwhelmed by emotion at odd moments. The sight of Thomas building a cradle in the evenings, his large hands working the wood with patient precision, would make her cry. The feel of the baby moving inside her for the first time made her sob with joy so intense it felt like her heart might burst. Thomas weathered these emotional storms with patient affection, holding her when she needed comfort, giving her space when she needed to work through things alone. "I am sorry I am so weepy," she apologized one evening after crying over a sunset that was particularly beautiful. "I do not know what is wrong with me. You are growing our child. That is what is wrong with you, or rather, nothing is wrong. You are perfect, tears and all." He kissed her temple. "Cry all you want, love. I will be here to hold you through all of it." The pregnancy progressed normally through the fall and into another hard winter. Winona worked on knitting blankets and tiny clothes, projects she could do while sitting by the fire. Thomas read to her from new books he had ordered, adventure stories and poetry and scientific treatises about horse breeding that fascinated him even if they sometimes put her to sleep. "You are snoring," he would tease when he noticed, and she would protest even though she knew it was true. "The baby makes me tired. The baby makes you adorable." He would set aside the book and pull her into his lap, careful of her growing belly. "Have I told you today how much I love you? Only 3 times. You are slacking." "Then let me remedy that. I love you, Winona Bryant. I love you more than the mountains, more than the sky, more than every horse that has ever been born. That is quite a lot of love. It does not even begin to cover it. In March, when the snow was beginning to melt but winter was not quite ready to relinquish its hold, Winona went into labor 3 weeks earlier than expected. Thomas sent Ben racing for the midwife in town, then paced the bedroom like a caged animal while Winona breathed through the contractions with surprising calmness. "You should not have to see this," she gasped between pains. "It is not proper. To hell with proper. I am not leaving you." He held her hand, winced when she gripped it hard enough to hurt, wiped sweat from her forehead with a cool cloth. "You are doing so well, love. So strong." The midwife, Mrs. Cooper, arrived just as the labor intensified, bustling into the room with calm efficiency. She shooed Thomas out over both his and Winona's protests, insisting that childbirth was women's work and he would only be in the way. Thomas retreated to the main room but could not sit still, wearing a path in the floorboards as he listened to Winona's cries of pain and the midwife's encouraging words. Every sound from the bedroom made him flinch, made him want to burst through the door and demand to be let back in. Ben tried to distract him with conversation, but Thomas barely heard him. All his attention focused on the woman he loved laboring to bring their child into the world. When the baby's first cry split the air, thin and reedy but unmistakably alive, Thomas felt his knees go weak. He started toward the bedroom, but Mrs. Cooper emerged first, her weathered face creased in a smile. "You have a son, Mr. Bryant. A healthy boy with good lungs and all his fingers and toes. Your wife did beautifully, though she is exhausted. Give me a moment to finish cleaning them both up and you can come in." A son. He had a son. Thomas felt tears streak down his face and did not care who saw them. When Mrs. Cooper finally beckoned him in, he entered to find Winona propped against pillows, pale and drawn but with a smile of such radiance it took his breath away. In her arms was a tiny bundle wrapped in one of the blankets she had knitted, and as Thomas approached he saw a small red face, eyes squeezed shut, mouth working as if tasting this new world. "Meet your son," Winona said softly. "He is perfect, Thomas. Absolutely perfect." Thomas sat on the edge of the bed, hardly daring to breathe as she transferred the baby into his arms. He had handled countless newborn foals, but this was different, terrifyingly different. This tiny person was his, flesh of his flesh, blood of his blood, and the weight of responsibility was crushing and exhilarating all at once. "Hello, son," he whispered. "I am your father. I know I do not look like much, but I promise I will do my best by you. I will teach you about horses and honor, and how to love with your whole heart, the way your mother taught me." The baby opened his eyes briefly, unfocused blue that would probably change color with time, and Thomas felt his heart expand in a way he had not known was possible. "He is incredible. Winona, you did incredible. Thank you for this gift. We did it together." She reached out and touched his hand where it cradled their son. "What should we name him?" They had discussed names but never settled on one, and now Thomas found the answer coming easily. "I want to name him after your father, William, if that is all right with you." Fresh tears spilled down Winona's cheeks. "William. Yes, that is perfect. William Bryant." She stroked the baby's impossibly soft cheek. "My father would have loved you, little one. He would have been so proud." They spent hours simply marveling at their son, tracing his tiny features, counting his miniature fingers and toes, falling deeper in love with each small sound he made. Mrs. Cooper showed Winona how to nurse him, and Thomas watched in awe as his son latched on and began to feed, already knowing what to do through instinct as old as humanity itself. The next weeks were exhausting and wonderful in equal measure. William was a good baby as babies went, but he still woke frequently to nurse, and both Thomas and Winona stumbled through their days half asleep and completely besotted. Thomas helped with everything despite the traditional expectation that men not involve themselves in infant care. He changed nappies, walked the floor with William when he was fussy, sang off key lullabies that made Winona laugh even in the depths of exhaustion. "You are going to spoil him," she teased one night as Thomas paced the bedroom, the baby draped against his broad shoulder, patting his back to bring up milk bubbles. "Impossible. You cannot spoil a baby with love." Thomas swayed gently, the motion one that William seemed to find soothing. "Besides, I missed so much with you while we were getting to know each other. I do not want to miss a moment with him." Spring turned to summer, and William grew from a tiny newborn into a chunky, smiling baby who seemed to recognize his parents and respond to their voices. Thomas rigged up a sling that allowed Winona to carry William while she worked, and the baby seemed to enjoy being close to his mother, watching the world with increasingly alert eyes. Jake Patterson stopped by one afternoon and found Thomas in the barn, working on repairing some tack while William slept in a basket nearby. "Domesticity suits you, Bryant," he said with a grin. "Never thought I would see the day you were more interested in babies than horses." "I am still interested in horses," Thomas protested. "But yes, that little man there has stolen my heart completely. Him and his mother. I am a changed man, Jake, and I have no regrets about it. Winona is good for you. I am glad things worked out." Jake's expression grew more serious. "Heard that Garrett got himself thrown in jail down in Colorado Springs for assaulting a woman there. He will be locked up for a good long while. Thought you would want to know." Thomas felt a grim satisfaction at the news. He had not forgotten what Garrett had tried to do to Winona, would never forget, and knowing the man was facing justice eased a knot of anger he had been carrying. Good. He deserves worse, but at least he cannot hurt anyone else for a while. As William's first birthday approached, Thomas and Winona stood together on their porch, watching their son toddle around the yard, chasing one of the barn cats with more enthusiasm than skill. The ranch had prospered beyond their hopes. The house was in the process of being expanded with the new rooms Thomas had promised, and life felt full in a way neither of them had dared to dream. "You remember when I first arrived?" Winona asked, leaning into Thomas's side. "How terrified I was that you would take one look at me and regret your decision. I remember. I was just as terrified that you would regret yours." He wrapped an arm around her waist, pulling her closer. "Seems ridiculous now, does it not? All that fear over what has become the best thing that ever happened to me, to both of us." Winona turned in his arms, looking up at him with eyes full of love. "You told me I was your only joy, Thomas. Do you remember, that day after the storm? I remember every word I have ever said to you. And it was true then, and it is true now. You are my only joy, Winona. You and William, this life we have built, it is everything I ever wanted and so much more than I thought I deserved. You deserve all of it and more. You are the best man I have ever known." She rose on her toes to kiss him, sweet and lingering. "I love you, Thomas Bryant, today, tomorrow, and every day for the rest of our lives. I love you too, more than words can say." William toddled over, demanding attention with the imperious manner of a 1-year-old, and they laughed as Thomas swept him up, tossing him gently into the air and catching him to squeals of delight. Winona watched her husband and son, her heart so full she thought it might overflow, and marveled at the journey that had brought her here to this moment, to this life. She had boarded that stagecoach over a year ago with nothing but fear and hope, wondering if she was making a terrible mistake, wondering if the stranger waiting for her would regret choosing her. Instead, she had found love deeper and truer than anything she had imagined, had found a partner who valued her, a home that sheltered her, a child who completed her. The sun set behind the mountains in a blaze of gold and crimson, painting their ranch in warm light, and Winona felt the rightness of it all settle into her bones. This was where she belonged. This was home. And whatever challenges the future brought, they would face them together, bound by love and commitment and the unshakable knowledge that they had found in each other something rare and precious. 2 years later, Winona gave birth to twin daughters, Emma and Grace, who kept the household in cheerful chaos. Thomas took to fathering daughters with the same enthusiasm he had brought to raising William, fiercely protective but determined to teach them to be strong and independent. He taught all 3 children to ride almost as soon as they could walk, and it was not uncommon to see the whole family out among the horses, working together with the easy cooperation of people who genuinely enjoyed each other's company. The ranch continued to grow, becoming known throughout Colorado and beyond for the quality of its horses. Thomas and Winona worked side by side to build something that would last beyond their lifetimes, something they could pass down to their children and grandchildren. They expanded the barns, built a bunkhouse for the hired hands they now employed, and finally completed the larger house Thomas had dreamed of, though they often joked that they liked the coziness of the original cabin better. On their 10th anniversary, Thomas surprised Winona with a trip to Denver, arranging for Jake and his wife to watch the children for a week. They stayed in a fine hotel, attended the theater, ate in restaurants, and enjoyed the novelty of being just a couple again, not parents and ranchers with endless responsibilities. "This is wonderful," Winona said one evening as they strolled through the city streets, her hand tucked into the crook of his arm. "But I miss them already. The children, the ranch, all of it. I know, so do I." Thomas smiled down at her. "But it is good to remember who we were before we became parents, to remember that we are not just Thomas and Winona Bryant, parents and ranchers, but also Thomas and Winona, husband and wife who fell in love against all odds. We did not we, fall in love against all odds?" She stopped walking and turned to face him fully. "I never told you this, but that first day when I got off the stagecoach, I saw you standing there, and I thought you were the handsomest man I had ever seen. And then you spoke, and you were kind, and I thought maybe, just maybe, I had been incredibly lucky." "You thought I was handsome?" Thomas grinned, pleased. "I thought you were terrified of me." "I was terrified, but not of you specifically. Of the whole situation, of the unknown, of all the ways it could go wrong. But Thomas, it did not go wrong. It went so incredibly right. Every day with you has been a gift, even the hard days, even the days when we fought or when money was tight or when the children were sick and we were both exhausted. All of it has been a gift because I got to live it with you." He pulled her into his arms right there on the busy Denver street, not caring who saw, and kissed her with all the passion and tenderness of their wedding night. "You are my everything, Winona Bryant, my heart, my home, my reason for drawing breath. You are my only joy, now and always." "And you are mine," she whispered against his lips. "My cowboy, my love, my one true thing in this whole wide world." They returned home to find the children had been perfect angels for Jake and his wife, though Jake's relieved expression suggested that was a generous interpretation. William, now 12, had clearly been in charge, marshaling his younger sisters with the authority of a seasoned ranch hand. The twins, at 10, had energy enough to power a steam engine and imaginations that led them into all manner of mischief. Life settled back into its familiar rhythms. seasons passing in a cycle of work and love and growth. The children grew, the ranch prospered, and Thomas and Winona grew older together, their love deepening with each passing year rather than fading. They added to their family one more time when Winona was 38. A surprise baby boy they named James, who arrived with red hair and a temper to match, keeping them young even as gray crept into their own hair. On a spring evening when Winona was 52 and Thomas 57, they sat together on the porch of their home, watching the sun set over land they had worked and loved for nearly 30 years. Their children were grown now, William running the ranch with his father and planning to take over fully in a few more years. The twins married to good men and living nearby with children of their own. James away at agricultural college but due home for the summer. "You ever regret it?" Winona asked, her head resting on Thomas's shoulder. "Sending away for a mail-order bride instead of courting someone local, someone you knew?" Thomas was quiet for a moment, and Winona felt him press a kiss to the top of her head. "Not for a single second. Not even on the hardest days, not even when we have fought or struggled or faced losses. You are the best decision I ever made, Winona. You are my only joy, and that has been true from the moment you stepped off that stagecoach until right now, and it will be true until I draw my last breath." Winona felt tears prick her eyes, but they were happy tears, the kind that came from a heart too full to contain all the emotion it held. "I wondered, that first day and for months after, I wondered if you would regret me, if I would be enough for you. You were always more than enough. You were everything." He tilted her face up to look at him, his brown eyes still as warm as they had been 3 decades ago. "I love you, Winona Bryant. I have loved you from the beginning, and I will love you beyond the end. I love you too, Thomas. More than words, more than life, more than anything in this world or the next." They sat together as the stars came out one by one, two people who had taken a chance on each other and found something most people spend their whole lives searching for. The ranch sprawled around them, full of horses and memories and the echoes of children's laughter. The mountains stood eternal in the distance, and the wind carried the scent of pine and sage and home. It was not the life Winona had imagined for herself on that long-ago day when she answered Thomas's advertisement, desperate and alone and afraid. It was so much better. It was laughter and hard work, tears and triumphs, ordinary moments made extraordinary by being shared with someone who truly loved you. It was waking up each morning beside your best friend, your partner, your love. It was building something together that would outlast you both, a legacy of love and perseverance carved into the very land. Thomas stood and offered Winona his hand, pulling her to her feet. "Come to bed, wife. Morning comes early and we have another day ahead of us. Another day of working together, loving together, living together." Winona took his hand, their fingers interlacing with the ease of long practice. "I cannot think of anything I would rather do or anyone I would rather do it with." They walked into their home together, closing the door on the night, and if anyone had been watching, they would have seen the lights go out one by one, leaving only the glow of love that no darkness could diminish, a light that had burned steady and true for 30 years and would continue burning for all the years to come. Because some loves, the real ones, the true ones, the ones built on respect and partnership and genuine affection, those loves lasted forever. And Thomas and Winona Bryant, the cowboy and his mail-order bride who had both been so afraid of regret, had found exactly that. A love that lasted forever, a joy that never faded, a happiness that only grew deeper with time. They had taken a leap of faith into the unknown and landed safely in each other's arms, and that, in the end, was the greatest gift either of them could have asked for. Their story became legend in Central City, the tale of the mail-order bride and the cowboy who fell in love and built an empire together, who raised a family and prospered, and grew old side by side. Young couples would point to them as an example of what marriage should be, and Thomas and Winona would smile at each other with the secret knowledge of all long-married couples, that it was not always easy, that it required work and compromise and choosing each other every single day, but that when you found the right person, the person who was your only joy, it was worth every moment of effort. Years later, when their grandchildren asked them how they had made their marriage work for so long, how they had stayed in love when so many others fell out of it, Thomas and Winona would exchange a look and answer in unison. We chose each other every day. In good times and bad, in sickness and health, in prosperity and struggle. We chose love, and that made all the difference. And it truly had.